This very much feels like the old Prince Harry.
This is the height of his bad boy era.
You meet three girls in a bar in Las Vegas and invite them up to your room.
I think the royal family just wasn't prepared for that.
The palace did say, yes, this is Harry, but do not print it.
He's gone from one of the most popular royals to one of the least popular. And does Meghan have something to do with that?
Everyone's been in this situation where you've got a mate who marries someone who you don't get along with and you don't see him anymore.
Welcome to Royal Exclusive Rewind, where we relive the highlights and the lowlights of royal family history. This week we go back to August 2012 when naked photos of Prince Harry were splashed across the internet after he played a game of strip billiards during a boozy 5-day party with friends in Las Vegas. Harry later claimed his antics were a little too much army and not enough prints. Joining me is news commentator Samara Gill and Daily Beast's European editor-at-large Tom Sykes. Welcome to you both. Look, this is going back to 2012. A lot has happened since 2012 with Prince Harry. This very much feels like the old Prince Harry. He went out, he was partying in Las Vegas. Some photos leaked out after a game of strip billiards. There was controversy at the time, but, you know, was it really that bad?
It was a funny one, wasn't it, Matt? Because I remember at the time when the photos dropped and there was a lot of questions over whether they were authentic. It was, I mean, fake photos were a lot rarer back then than they are today. There was a lot of discussion about whether they were authentic. And I remember one of the things that helped people decide ultimately that they were authentic was a kind of pendant that he was wearing around his neck in the photograph that he'd been seen wearing in other photographs. And yeah, it was very much, I think, people really identified with Harry at that time. And I remember he went on a public engagement 2 or 3 days afterwards and a kid said to him, "Have you been naughty, Harry?" or something. He went, "Oh yes, I have been a bit naughty." And it was like, it was all a big laugh. And I remember Piers Morgan famously sent out this tweet saying, you know, I'm absolutely horrified that I wasn't invited. You know, and I think that there was always this thing of who's the royal you'd most like to go and have a pint with? Prince Harry. And I think if anything, that image, as embarrassing as it was for him, and not saying that, you know, it was in any way what he would have wanted, and it obviously was embarrassing, but I think that ultimately people had a lot of sympathy for him. And, you know, he was being deployed to Afghanistan 3 days later or 5 days later, and it was just a pre-army send-off.
Well, there's a few issues here. I mean, he was an army officer at the time. He was heading off to Afghanistan a couple of weeks before we had represented the Queen at the closing ceremony of London 2012. Do you think, the London 2012 Olympics, Samara, do you think he was right when he said a little bit, you know, too much army, not enough prints, or was just this the old Harry?
I mean, this was vintage Harry, wasn't it? This is the height of his bad boy era in some ways. And yeah, I think people were just shocked because they hadn't seen a royal in that sort of position before, let's just say. And I think that it sent ripple effects around the world, that photo that was infamously leaked. And I think that the perception of the royal family probably changed a little bit. This is sort of the changing of the guard. This is the new wave of royal. I think it probably made William look quite sensible and quite good, which was actually probably a good thing. But it shows just how much Harry is able to get away with as the quote-unquote spare. And I do think, yeah, I mean, it was just a couple days before he was getting deployed. So I think people have got a bit of time for that. But it's unprofessional, that's for sure. It's not how we pictured it.
It's weekend off.
Sure. It is, but yeah. Yeah, but I mean, when regardless or not whether this was on the public purse or the public dime, he is still he was a working royal at the time.
It's a very good point, actually. He also had protection officers with him.
Yeah.
I mean, there is obviously a security issue here if people, you know, if you're inviting groups of women you've never known before to come in. And look, everyone has camera phones these days. Tom, you mentioned about the fact that whether we could authenticate the picture. The palace did say, yes, this is Harry, but do not print it because it's an invasion of his privacy. I mean, where do you guys stand on that? Was it an invasion? Is this photograph an invasion of his privacy? You know, should it have been leaked? Should people be reporting? And with the evidence, everyone having camera phones, I'm surprised there isn't more of this kind of stuff.
I think in some ways it represents the last of that kind of slightly quaint tradition of, is this an invasion of privacy or is this not? Should we refer it to the Complaints Commission, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Because it was just such a massive seismic
Well, it was
event
all over the
that
internet.
went all over the internet. There was no way you could hold it back.
Newspapers couldn't. We were told not to run it, but if you just went on the internet, it was everywhere. Everyone had posted it up.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. In a way, it was that kind of clash between the kind of old media, not quite sure, how did the rules apply to it, and then the sort of mass dissemination of social media, where this image, as you say, was everywhere and went everywhere. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you meet 3 girls in a bar in Las Vegas and invite them up to your room, and you're surprised that they turn out not to be the salt of the earth. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, Harry.
Yeah, I mean, it's very bad judgment on his part. And I agree with you. While it is the sort of the start of that, it's also this new era of, I'm sure allegedly, Philip might have engaged in some sort of similar, some raucous parties, let's just say.
If you believe the Crown.
If I believe the Crown, which I totally don't know. But a lot of royals used to have some very extravagant, pompous do's and things like that, but it was all very private. And yeah, this was kind of the start of people being able to, quote unquote, invade privacy, and I think the royal family just wasn't prepared for that. I think that they would have been shocked in the palace to see that something like this would have been might have gotten out. And I think this invasion of privacy line it doesn't cut it anymore.
Well, apparently, according to Spare, he spoke to his dad about it, and he said he wasn't admonished for it. He wasn't in a lot of trouble. And I think Harry referenced that I think a European magazine had printed similar pictures of not a partying Charles, but a younger Charles who may have been similarly declothed. But he did write about it in Spare. Is this something that Harry should hide from? Is it something he should embrace? He's a married father of 2 now. Is it something just in his past? Will we ever see this likes again?
Well, I don't think we'll see it again, put it that way. And I think that the whole story was such an interesting clash of new media and old media. And I remember The Sun doing some front pages that were trying to figure out how they could work around or within these structures. And then finally The Sun did publish it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, with the title, Here It Is, Here It Is.
Because everyone had seen it.
Because everyone had seen it, yeah.
I mean, Harry's obsessed with his privacy still. Yeah. He's obsessed with, obsessed with keeping his family, rightly so, maybe keeping his children away from being photographed, but he doesn't like media intrusion. Do you think this was like a perfect storm? Do you think the world's moved on? Do you think he still worries about it?
It's a good question. I mean, well, I think that it's part of the reason this photo and other photos that he's been embroiled in are part of the reason why people don't like Meghan, because they can sort of pinpoint his time before and after, pre and post, of how he was. I mean, I think that he's done a complete sort of 180 in his personality, his public persona. And of course, yeah, he's growing up. I mean, he grew up in the public eye his entire life, and he's expected to change, but he really has gone from party boy Harry to someone who in most posts looks solemn, depressed, upset, and sort of victimizes himself. So I think you can really compare those 2 Harrys and see the change. And does Meghan have something to do with that? I think yes. For better or for worse, that's for the audience to answer. But
I think that's such a good point, Samara, that I think it really points up the difference between who he was and who he is now. And there's a very interesting story actually in the Wall Street Journal just today saying that Harry was sort of lonely and adrift in Montecito, that he's at a loose end, that he doesn't have a network of friends around him. And that is absolutely true. I mean, you talk to people who knew Harry back in the day and they don't really speak to him anymore. And there is a sense, again, Tom Bower's book described this sort of shooting party that Harry was at, and all the lads were making all their inappropriate jokes, and Meghan was saying, well, I don't think that's very appropriate. And on one hand, you can say, well, good for her, standing up for her principles. But on the other hand, you can say, hang on, this was this guy who was synonymous with like good fun and having a laugh and going to Vegas and playing strip billiards with random chicks he met in the bar. And
how is it that he's gone from one of the most popular royals to one of the least popular in just that 10-year period?
I think we know. I wrote a story a couple of years ago talking about how all his friends in California are the husbands or boyfriends of Meghan's friends.
Or his security guys.
Or the security guys. And surely that's not a healthy way to live. He needs to go back to Las Vegas and do this again. What do you reckon?
You've got your infamous scoop that you had, Matt, of him going to trying to meet his friends in London with the
This is the
ring doorbell,
camera,
the infamous photo, and he just looks bewildered. He looks like he's desperately searching for friendship and not finding it. And sort of going to an old friend's house and and it gives you such a insight into his psychology at the moment. I think that he is feeling totally alone. He wants that British sort of lad friendship that he used to have. But you just can't find that in Montecito. And Meghan's from a completely different world, completely different. Would you say that's the case?
I think it's absolutely the case. And I think it is really, I think that everyone's been in this situation where you've got a mate who marries someone who you don't get along with and you don't see him anymore. And it's really sad, and it's like, but it is really hard because, you have to make a decision and you have to go one way or the other. And Harry's made his decision. He's made his call. He's gone in that direction. And I don't know, I wouldn't particularly want to hang out with like Ted Sarandos, but whatever.
Jeff
you grow
Bezos.
up though, don't you? Hasn't he just grown up? I mean, I'm sure all the royals have kind of grown up over in their lives, probably even William and stuff, haven't they? Isn't it just he's grown up and had a family and we don't see him go to Vegas anymore and do things like
there's
this?
Something very odd about people who don't have old friends around them, and I think it makes people suspicious, and I think it was one of the things that initially made the royal family very suspicious about the wedding, that there were none of Meghan's old friends there. There were no school friends. There were no college friends.
Family?
There were no family. But I think it's so important for us. Like, friendship is a really weird relationship because it's, in a way, the strength of friendship is that it's quite a weak relationship. Like, you can say to your friend, yeah, go to Australia. I'm sure your mate said to you, go to London, have a brilliant time, in a way that you hopefully wouldn't say to your partner, go to Australia, have a brilliant time.
Now.
But the point of friendship is that it can endure across those distances and across those times, even if it's quite a weak relationship, that then it can come back together and be strong again. But my understanding from people I know who knew him is that they've just been cut.
Because there were friends with him on that trip. It wasn't just him and his security guards and the 4 or 5 random women. There were old school friends with him then, weren't there, on that trip to Vegas?
There were. And of course, at that time, he was posting on his Facebook as Spike, whatever he was called. So there were all these pictures of them passed out on the beach and stuff, and all the mates with photographs of his shorts going, who's this? Who's this lying on the beach? Of course, and it was, so there was a sense of this vibrant group of mates who were all together and were all in it together. But you look at that group of people now, and none of them speak to him. None of them have any contact with him.
Just for balance, we did actually interview the women involved, back in the day in 2012, and they said that Harry was the perfect gentleman. On that night,
I'm sure he was,
and it was a big boozy night. But they said he was just a fun guy, and he was a perfect gentleman. So, yeah. Oh, what times! what a party era back in 2012.
It was a simpler time.
Wasn't it? Just random pictures on the internet that we couldn't produce. Lovely. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Right, that's all we have time for on this week's Royal Exclusive Rewind. Thanks to my guest, and thanks to you for watching. Do join me next time for some more royal nostalgia when we go back into royal history to uncover another iconic moment.